All right, guys. Growth by Shawn podcast. Second of the day for me today. I'm pretty pumped. Rob, what's up, brother?
Hey man,
All
great to
right,
see you. Great to be here.
guys. We got Rob Pengelly on the podcast today. And for anyone that has seen Rob and I's relationship from this past year grow into what it is, there for me are not a set of words that can describe the love that I have for you, Rob. There are not. Like you are one of the most amazing spiritual warrior individuals that I have ever met. And I am so proud to just do this dance with you today and just
Awesome.
just know you, you know. So
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's quite an intro for sure. I
you know,
super appreciate that. And I echo the feeling of connection with you, you know, to create some context for folks listening. Shawn and I met each other at a retreat, men specific retreat focused on growth, leveling up, and we got to experience each other's presence and energy close up and personal, right? And you know, Shawn has seen me and heard me at my most real, right? My most raw, and vice versa. We were there with other men also, and we have similar connections with those other guys as well. But yeah, that walk that we went on
mm-hmm,
together toward the end as well. Um,
mm-hmm.
it's good stuff, man. It's special stuff and rarefied air for
Yeah.
me for sure.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite memories from that trip specifically. And when we look at like connection to another person, it's that it's that indescribable just force that brings you closer to someone you don't know what it is per se. And I definitely feel that towards you, that gravitational pull towards other individuals. And it's not something that you have with everyone. And then when you do get it, it's very special, it's very meaningful, and you're able to break down the layers and the masks that you're wearing, and just exactly what you said, that realness, that rawness, that openness. And when you're finally able to express that with someone, especially man to man, it it's very there's a lightness that exudes from it, you know. So from your experience, just of when we met to where we're both currently at, what has it been like to have a group of men that you can really, or even our relationship specifically, um that makes it so that like you feel that openness, and that I don't have to cover myself up. What is that feeling like for you?
It's a really good question. And the the piece that comes up first and foremost for me is that the feeling is both freeing and foreign, right? In that it's foreign based upon my past experience and my past gravitation toward being guarded.
Mm,
And um again, to paint the picture, right, is the freedom came from leaning into doing something very simple and incredibly hard, which is telling the truth and being me, right? Sharing my story. And so what I was able to share with you around my experience as a child, a teenager, and then a young man, right? Around my relationships with people, my relationships with my family, my relationship with myself, and ultimately my relationship with drugs, right? Alcohol and otherwise. That's a really simple thing to do, right? You're talking, you're sharing a story. It's incredibly hard because of my guarded past, and removing that barrier of connection to another man, a group of men, it, well, one is scary as hell, right? And two, on the other side of it, there is now this lightness that you alluded to. And, you know, for you in particular, my relationship with you, that is a great word to describe, is lightness, because your personality, right? You're a funny guy and enjoy fun, right? And bring that joyful energy into an environment, which for me pushes buttons, right? Like it
Yep.
And in a good, bad way, right? Like it's a button that I have that I have identified that I want to move beyond. Right. So when I'm in environments, right, like this last weekend is a great example, right? There's this playful energy comes up and it kind of, whoa, like that's a little bit uncomfortable. But then I get to start asking myself, not only why is it uncomfortable, well, how is it uncomfortable, right? What is it bringing up in me that is the source of that discomfort? Because given what you know about me and what I know about you, like there's trust, like at a core level, right? There's trust. So when that discomfort comes up, it's an opportunity for me to go introspective again, of like Shawn's my boy, like he's my brother, like he's not doing this thing
out to get you, in a sense,
right, to like ruffle feathers. And yet there's feathers ruffled. So it's like I can, you know, I can refer into that old pattern of like, oh, like time for Rob to get guarded, or I can lean in and go like, okay, like what is going on here? And I want to have fun. Right. So like, well, shit, like let's just let go. And have some fun then.
It's interesting you say that and say it like that, because I have found that I ruffle a lot of feathers, like a lot of feathers. I have a very unique sense of sarcasm, humor, and it's very funny to me. It's amusing to not only, and if I was to get introspective here, because everything, like, we understand at a certain level of consciousness too, that everything in the world, you must look introspective in order to get the answer. And when I look at that within me, I ruffle a lot of feathers, and I almost feel like at some level, am I actually trying to push buttons of someone else, or am I just doing everything out of love? and even when I'm being sarcastic, even when I'm being funny, I honestly don't think I'm trying to ruffle feathers, but in turn, I find it a little amusing to get the reaction of ruffling feathers at times. So it's, and this is the first time I'm even really like looking at that within myself a little bit more. So that's good that you're pushing me to even get here and look here, because I haven't looked at that before. I just say I'm really funny, and I go and, say XYZ about you and push you a little, like, to your limit. I'm just pushing someone until, like, I don't want to take things too far. I do want to have, like, I have self-respect for every single person that comes by me, but I'll push you a little bit. It's fun to push people's buttons a little bit. But when people push my buttons, I also think it's funny. I like to get my buttons pushed, because, like, even look at when we were in Tucson, when we were in Virginia, everyone, it's easy to make me out to be the quote unquote bad guy in a sense, like, just find something that Shawn does. We could look at sauerkraut as a whole. It's a group versus me and sauerkraut. We look at Virginia, it's a group versus me and provolone cheese.
Provolone cheese, man.
Different things like that. And that's a very, like, surface level example in a sense, but at the same time, like, that's where I'm getting at. How did you end up in Tucson? And you can describe this any which way you want to go.
Yeah, so it's a long and winding road that extends behind me and extends out in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
So, the short, easy answer, right, is that I worked with Chase Tollison, who's been on this podcast.
Yep.
Right. And I would imagine that a number of people listening recognize that name. The longer, more accurate story is that I decided when I was a teenager to begin a relationship with alcohol. And unbeknownst to me at the time, that is a substance that can slowly take over your life, right? Mm-hmm. It is a pitcher plant, right? You land on the lip, the nectar is sweet, and you slide further and further down until you're drowning. You can't get out. So "15 years old, I got blackout drunk for the first time. And accelerated my drinking through high school, through university, expanded out into other substances, the details of which are largely inconsequential. A lot of reckless behavior that I now, recognize as passive attempts to end my own life is the most accurate descriptor of that. And that phase thankfully passed. The suicidal ideations, the drinking remained, right? And so I'm drinking through my 20s, through my 30s, into my 40s. And I was working in a career that was super upregulating, super stressful, huge demands hourly. Work came home with me, always on, right? And reached a point where, again, unbeknownst to me, my intuition steps in, something larger than myself, and I left that career. And that was really the beginning of me reclaiming sovereignty over my own life, right? Where I got very introspective and ownership of all my actions, ownership of my time, ownership of my emotional state. And 3 years after leaving that career, I had navigated myself into a place where I started taking care of my body, which for me meant rest and recovery. I mean, I've always been relatively fit and like, and hard charging from that standpoint. Decided to stop drinking, right? And pretty close to when I decided to stop drinking is when I discovered Chase. And working with him is what I can now say, 19 months down the road, helped me transition from white knuckle willpower, not drinking, to changing my identity to become the person that doesn't drink, because I recognize that it's not who I am, and it's not who I want to become, and it is in no way, shape, or form something that serves me. And the retreat in Tucson was at least to date, me reaching a mountaintop with my alcohol story, right? It was, I knew that I was a different person. And there was still an opportunity for me to tell that full story out loud, right? To really own it, right? I had read that to myself and done that work and released a lot of that energy. It is another thing entirely to read that out loud to other human beings, to other men. And you guys were there for that entire thing in an environment of support that blew me away at the time, and that I will forever cherish. So very long-winded way to answer the question of how did I end up in Arizona.
Hey, I said you could take it any way you wanted. Because you're such an amazing storyteller as well. I knew you'd be an amazing guest to be on the podcast, especially with our connection. And this being one of the first couple podcasts you've been on, at least it gives you, I feel like it gives you a little sense of peace. You good over there?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay. Number 2 is
Yeah. Number 2. Gotcha. But that experience for me, when you read that story in that container that we created, that was the most, debatably the most spiritual experience that I have ever been a part of. There was something higher than myself that I could feel in terms of the energy that was exuding through you, out of you, and into me, in the best way. And it was easily one of the most, for myself, just life-changing experiences that I have been able to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, likewise. And so what that makes me think of, right, is that it's about our energy,
mm-hmm.
and it's about our intention.
Mm-hmm.
Because something like that experience, right, or it's a retreat, right, and
Mm-hmm.
you can put that out on an island by
Mm-hmm.
itself.
Mm-hmm.
This is a retreat, what
Mm-hmm.
you and I are doing right now.
Mm.
When you go on vacation with your family, that's a retreat.
Yep.
When you make it the intention of the event. And I was very clear in my intention of the event that took
Mm-hmm.
place in Arizona. I'm one part of that energy paradigm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chase and Dave are other parts of it, right? They're
Yep.
building the container.
Yep.
But then each and every one of you that was there is also part of it, right? So the energy that you felt when I was sharing my story,
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to share that story in that way at that moment in time because of the energy that I'm receiving from you
Mm-hmm.
and the other guys,
Yeah.
that allows me to unlock that piece of myself and let it out. And that's one of the most profound things that I have learned throughout the course of my adult life,
Mm-hmm.
and particularly over the last handful of years, is that it's about the connection, right? That energy, wavelength, vibration, however you want to describe it using our language.
Yep.
That's what it's about, right? Because I can go in with the intention, but if there's an energy blocking the release,
Mm-hmm.
does it happen?
Yeah.
And vice versa,
Yep.
right? You guys can be all open and ready to receive and calling me forward,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm blocking
Yeah.
myself.
Yep.
And thankfully, for me, in that container, it was both things coming together at the
Yep.
same time, right? That allowed it to manifest the way that it did.
Yeah. Because if you go and, if I was to just, if I was um having, and this is an easy example, I'll try to just make this as basic as possible. If I was having a breakup right now or something, and it was just something that I didn't want to let go of, but I just wanted to talk about, and like, if I at my core didn't want to let go of it, but I'm talking through it, I'm not going to get over it. You need to have both. You need to have the intention and energy of, I am going to get through this, without the outcome of, like, I need to get through this right now. Like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But if I'm going in with the intention, I am working to get through this and release this right now. If there's an underlying, I don't really want to release it, then you won't. And that's the example that I'm just trying to use. Yours is obviously a more clear example, but just for for someone else that may relate more to this type of example.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, you can insert any story, right? That's up in your head, right? You got in an argument with a family member, right? You're on the rocks in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shit's gone sideways at work. You injured yourself working out, right? I mean, like, pick it, right?
Yeah.
And slot it in. As you said, if you are attached to the story, that it is part of your identity,
yep,
that's a block.
Yep.
Right. And I identified with drinking for 30 years until I decided I want something different.
Yep.
So I'm going to do something different.
Yep.
Right. And I think there's also a point of connection here to what we were talking about earlier, right? With ruffling feathers and pushing buttons, right? Is that something happened to you, right? To you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're offended by it or hurt by it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we as people are complicit in taking offense or being hurt, right? It's a choice that we make, right? Somebody says something offensive or somebody cuts you off in traffic, right? To use a simple example.
Yep.
Well, if you get angry or take offense, well, that's on you, right? Like, you're complicit in taking offense and being angry because that person in the other car is not writing that story in your brain.
Yeah.
Right. And does it get more complicated as the stakes get higher? Right. Sure. Of course it does. And the time frames stretch out.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we all have the opportunity to end up at the same place, which is letting go and writing a new narrative.
Yep. It's the two most powerful words that you've used, and I think the two most influential words for myself that I've learned is decide and identity. Those two words, I think, are two of the most powerful words that we can use, because when you decide to do something differently, when you decide to change your action, when you decide that you want to become something more, and then when you change your identity in terms of who you actually are, that is what will back so much of those actions and decisions that you can make. You know, if you continue to tell yourself that story of I'm an alcoholic and I'm using this to escape and I'm X, Y, and Z, that is what will repeat itself. That is what you are telling yourself that you are. That's who you are telling yourself you are. Even if you decide to not drink today, but you continue to decide to tell yourself that you are an alcoholic, it's going to be much harder to go and stop drinking. That's why I think decide and identity are those two biggest words that someone can use to truly change, like, the trajectory of their life. You can look at all the habits and you look at all, and it's all important. It's all important. I'm not saying like that, oh, well, if you don't change your habit, like if you just keep the same habits, but you change your identity, then you'll be the same. Like, there's that weird paradigm of, well, if I change my identity, then my habits must change though, you know? And there's other things that are intertwined. So I think it's just the side and identity that are those two biggest things. After we had went to Arizona, what was the biggest thing you had learned from everyone else?
Man, honestly, for me, the biggest thing that I learned is that I have the ability to trust other people.
Mm.
And that, that for me is a cornerstone piece of my new identity, and was also a cornerstone piece of my old identity, in the sense that it was lacking. Okay. Right? I come from a background where trust was called into question by the people closest to me at a very early age.
Yeah.
And that's why I drank. Right? So it's numbing the pain of an absence of trust. And rediscovering my trust, because it 100% is a rediscovery, right? Where I was born with trust, and I had trust. I experienced trust, and then it went away, and I've refound it again. And with the rediscovered trust that I have, not only in other people, but in myself now, like, let's fucking go. Like, yeah. I'm on a completely different trajectory to the end of my life than I was before. And a big part of that was Tucson, right? Was having that opportunity to rediscover that trust in other people and myself.
Yeah. What was the day that you decided that alcohol was no more for you?
So yeah, this is a great question, and something that you said just a couple of minutes ago really landed for me, and it's worth expanding on and worth sharing. So right, so the piece of decide and identity, for any of you out there listening, the decide thing comes first, right? And the identity piece, it's going to show up when it shows up, right? So to put that in context, right, for me, it is March 26th, 2022. I am 45 years old. I started drinking when I was 9. That day, I had been drinking straight bourbon for somewhere between 8 to 10 hours. And I was with one of my best friends, who is still one of my best friends. And I was there to support him as he had been there to support me in the past. And through the course of our conversation, I chose to ask him a question that I had heard on the Barbell Shrugged podcast that Chris Moore put out. Don't remember the episode, don't remember the exact context. But what I do recall is that he said, what's the one thing that you're doing in your life that you hate? And just stop fucking doing it. So I asked my friend this question within the context of the conversation that we were having. And true to form, the great friend that he is, he asked it right back to me. And it's 1:00 in the morning, the 27th of March. And without missing a beat, I hold up my tumbler of whiskey and I say, this right here. And the thing that I know now is that glass that I'm holding up is representative of me when I'm drinking. That in that moment, what I was actually saying was, I hate myself because I keep doing this over and over and over. So I had been talking to myself for a long, long time, decades, right? This isn't good for me. I should stop doing this. It's hurting my relationships. It's hurting my health, so on and so forth. You're down in that pitcher plant. Words fall on deaf ears, you know, and I had stints where I would go for a while without drinking. Would always come back to it. That next morning when I woke up, right, and I can't find my contact lenses and, you know, shit's all over the place. Just feel like hot garbage. It's like, okay, like I want to do something a little bit differently, right? Because the words are in my head still. Like, I hate this. Like, I hate this. And thankfully, I had also 2 weeks prior heard the Should Detox from Mark England and Kimberly Kesting of Enlifted. And I should detox my alcohol, right? I should stop drinking. And for those of you that don't know the Should Detox, I'm going to invite you to hit pause and go look up Should Detox Enlifted podcast, pull up that episode and listen to it all the way through. And then you'll know what I'm talking about. And less than 14 days after hearing about the Should Detox, coupled with the barbell Buddha barking in my brain about what's the one thing that I do that I hate, I stopped drinking. 2 a.m. March 27th, 2022, almost 19 months ago. And it's a very simple thing to not pick up a drink. Simple and hard are two incredibly different, profoundly different things, right? So I have done a lot of really, really simple and easy things in my life. And I have done a lot of really, really complicated, hard things in my life. And I find great joy in that I was able to figure out doing this simple, hard thing for myself, because it has made the rest of my life immeasurably better. You know, and anybody that wants, you know, more context on that, like, I'm happy to talk about that with people in person. People that are exploring their relationship with alcohol or, other substances, like great conversations to have, and I say that with no motivation to, convince you of anything. People want to drink. People want to, explore being alcohol free, explore being sober, whatever you want to call it, for, windows of time. Awesome. Like, people want to completely change their relationship with alcohol. Awesome. Right. They're all conversations worth having, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's, again, this is why it's so meaningful, difficult, challenging, rewarding to chat with you. When people listen to this and hear things like that, it's just things that they can't imagine. It's when you look at, like, someone the other day asked me, so what are your vices? I'm like, thought of Rob. I was like, I'm on a date. Okay. She was like, what are your vices? And I'm like, I'm not Rob 20 years ago, so I don't have any fucking vices. No, in the best way. In the best way.
Yeah.
We look at, oh man, I'm lost for words. Like, because what you have been through and been able to get out of, it's one thing to go through something challenging. Okay. Your story is challenging. Okay. The story you were telling yourself was challenging. What you've been through is challenging. And there are people that, the thing is, suffering is subjective at the same time. And I'm
100%.
not saying that yours is, we're not comparing yours to mine, to whoever's listening. But when we look at something like what you have been through, it's one thing to hold on to that, but at some point, it's your responsibility to get through it. It may not have even been your fault that it happened at the time, but it's your responsibility to get through it. And now that you've done so much work on yourself and been through that, and you're this gateway to more and more people that are in need, searching for an answer, and you are one more person that can help. That's why I think that you are here. You are one more person that someone can come to and say, this is the exact issue that I have. And you will say, you know what, bro, I have been through that. Here is what I did. And you're not mapping it out. You're not saying this is my blueprint guide to stop drinking alcohol. No, it's let's look at what you've been through. Let's look at who you are, and let's see who you need to become. Because the consequence of staying the same, what is the consequence of staying the same? That's a great perspective that I look at very often. So
Yeah,
that's,
there's so much gold in what you just said, right? Pain is subjective. Everybody's pain is subjective. And the pain that you're living with, that's the worst pain is the worst pain in the world, because it's yours. And where it stacks up on some made up hierarchy of worst shit that's happened to human beings over the course of the history doesn't diminish the pain that you feel in any given moment, right? And that for me is like it's as close to a number one as you can get, right? Is As soon as we begin comparing our pain and where we're stuck to, well, it's not as bad as Shawn's.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as Rob's. It's not as bad as Sally's, right? You're diminishing the reality that you live with on a day-to-day basis instead of owning it. It's a trick that your own brain is playing on you in order for that story to stay locked in your head. And gaining an awareness of that is an incredibly powerful tool and moment that you can use again and again and again, because it's going to happen again and again and again, right? We get caught in these comparison traps and we self-deprecate, or, you know, could be worse type statements. And that's huge for sure. It's huge, is the awareness that what's yours is yours. You don't need to compare, and that the subjective thing, right? That it is all subjective.
Rob, let's get into our last question here as we start to wrap up. I don't want to overwhelm anyone who's listening. So, as I talked before, I was able to chat with Dennis Meralda of Building Men earlier today. So he didn't know that you were the one coming on when he created this question, but I told him afterwards, hey, this is going to be a great question for Rob. And so he was excited. And so he has left you. If you think back to yourself as a high school student, what would they say to you now?
My high school self is really proud of me and would say thank you. Thank you for having the courage to keep living. Thank you for finding that trust in yourself and in others again, and for doing simple, hard things that were avoided for a really long time. And I think that they would also say, right, that I would also say that the journey has just begun. That with the refound trust, right, this midlife renaissance that I have created for myself, right, hands are firmly on the steering wheel and I know where I want to go. And like, I've got people like you and the rest of my friends and brothers from Tucson and my life in general, my family and my 2 kids. Like, I'm on a low trajectory to a distant horizon that involves a shitload of good stuff.
Oh man, Rob, I love talking to you, man. I really do. I Man,
Likewise.
I'm so thankful for you. This was badass. So, Rob, why don't you just fill us in of what you're doing now and how we can connect with you.
Yeah. So, thank you for the opportunity to share this. A big part of my journey that is, continuation of something that I have always been passionate about, which is communicating with people, conscious leadership.
Mm.
And what my current passion and manifestation of that is holistic lifestyle leadership, holistic lifestyle coaching, and story work.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Being an entrepreneur, owning my own time, is something that I'm super, super excited about. Living my own dream,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to pouring my creative energy into somebody else's dream. And my business is Progress Over Perfection Holistic Lifestyle Systems. People can find me at progress.over.perfection.coach on Instagram. And you can see what I'm up to there. If you want to connect, love to talk, DMs or face to face.
Perfect, man. Yeah. Anyone, I mean, really, anyone listening to this that thinks that they connected at all with Rob, I would 100% encourage them to go and just chat with you and go from there. This isn't a sales for your coaching and all that shit. This is just human to human, whether you're struggling with something or whether you just find this desire that you are that need to chat with someone, or even if you just feel that what we were talking about, that underlying energy that can't you you don't know what it is, and for some reason you were just connected with Rob. I would really urge you to go and have that chat with him. So I know you're open to it, bro.
Yeah,
So
100%. Thank you for putting that out there. I very much believe that our higher self talks to us,
mm-hmm.
and in those moments, that we have a decision to make
Mm.
around everything in our life. We
Mm-hmm.
either create or we allow.
Mm.
And when our higher self speaks up, it's asking you that question.
Yep.
What are you going to create,
Yep.
or what are you going to allow?
Yep. Yeah, that's beautiful. Guys, we're calling it here. All right. All right, guys. Peace out.